Hey everybody, what's up? You're watching The Sit Down. I'm DJ Sixsmith. Jen Richards is here with us. Clarice, brand new episode coming to CBS this week. Jen, how are you?
I'm excellent. How are you, DJ?
I'm doing really well. So Clarice has found a really passionate audience so far with the show, and you get to jump on, and you've been such an influential consultant as well. So what's been like jumping onto this one so far?
Really exciting. I came on, as you said, as a consultant to help create a character, a trans character who could kind of address the complicated legacy of the character of Buffalo Bill. And in the context of the show, she works at a pharmaceutical company, which might be our big bad guy. The FBI agents are still figuring that out. In the context of Clarice looking for an informant inside the pharmaceutical company to help them. And in the first episode, which airs this week, Julia, my character, is forced to question whether or not she wants to confront Clarice about her own complicity in the narrative framing of Buffalo Bill as a trans person and the way that that framing has hurt actual trans people.
Yeah, it's really important. And the other thing to bring up is just having that creative control, right? It's one thing to be a part of a show, it's another thing to be a consultant and also be in the show. So, what does it mean to you that you get to shape the narrative here and impact people who may know something about this story or may know absolutely nothing about this story?
In general, it's very important to me. I've been acting since I was, 6 months old. I grew up in the theater, but when I, came to Hollywood, there really wasn't a place for trans people. So a lot of my work has been behind the scenes advocacy work, kind of in hopes that the next generation of trans actors can just take it for granted that we get to be part of this industry. And so I'm really thrilled when my advocacy kind of tips over and provides an actual opportunity for me to do, what I loved in the first place. And it's even more important to me in this particular show. About 10 years ago, when I was on the eve of transition, I was kind of checking in with some friends and colleagues to see if I would, still have friends and a job after transition, which wasn't a given 10 years ago. And I mentioned to one of my colleagues that I was trans, and she looked at me quizzically and said, "Do you mean like Buffalo Bill?" Her only frame of reference 10 years ago was a violent serial killer. And that's not exactly the thing you want in your friend's minds when you're revealing something really vulnerable about yourself. And I mentioned that story and I kind of discussed the legacy of the character Buffalo Bill and a really great documentary called Disclosure, which is on Netflix, that chronicles the entire history of trans representation. And the showrunners of Clarice saw this and they wanted to put that right. They wanted to have a character within the realm, within the world of Silence of the Lambs and Clarice actually talk about that impact and then also provide an opportunity for a trans character to do something different than what we had seen before. So it's both personal and surreal and really just a profound delight to be part of that entire process and to come full circle in this way.
Yeah, I mean, what you talked about right there just represents how we look at different people, right? One character has defined how people in this country look at the trans community, which is crazy for a movie that was such a long time ago. So when you think about it, how detrimental has the Buffalo Bill thing been for the trans community?
It's detrimental in multiple ways. I mean, we are still seeing a rash of anti-trans bills across the country, many of which are rooted in the misunderstanding that trans people are somehow, predatory, when in fact trans people are rarely the perpetrators of violence, but very, very often at much higher rates, the victims of it. So it's created a narrative that isn't based in reality and actually shapes people's actions. And then on a more personal level, as a trans person growing up and watching television, and if that's the only way you ever get to see yourself as either violent or a victim, it doesn't exactly create a real hopeful model for your place in the world. So it's important that we simultaneously confront the legacy of characters like Buffalo Bill and all the kind of painful representation that's occurred previously, and then do something different and better so that we can move forward and so that kids today growing up will see themselves in a more positive manner.
I mean, the really beautiful thing is that your on-screen work is going to impact the next generation, right? You've gone through so much personally, and whether it's this show or Mrs. Fletcher, right? Those are things I've seen you in. Like, people will know that you are a trans actor, and this is what that looks like. So, what does that mean to you when you put it in perspective?
Uh, it kind of makes me it just kind of fills me with joy to know that there are kids out there today, young people who can turn on any television station and know that somewhere along the lines they're probably going to see a trans person, a trans character played by a trans actor, an out trans actor, and see us in social media and on magazine covers. That is a social change that I honestly didn't expect in my lifetime, and so I don't take it for granted. I'm filled with joy and gratitude and a profound amount of hope that this next generation that doesn't have to heal from as much trauma as my generation did can move the conversation forward in ways that I never imagined.
And it's really important to talk about that trauma in conversations like this, and also on the big screen when it comes to TV and film. And when you think about the show, I mean, millions of people will see it across the country, right? It's not just a select group here. So, what are you hoping people walk away with when they see your character and when they see these conversations going on in the show?
Just a couple of years ago, GLAAD put out a report, and at that time, 80% of respondents said that they didn't know a trans person in real life. So all that they knew was what they saw on screen. And so for that 80%, I'm just hopeful that after they get to know Julia over the course of 3 episodes, trans people will be a little less scary. It's like, oh, she's just a regular person doing a regular life and a regular job, and has her own adventures, and her transness is part of her character, but it's not all that she is. She's a whole person with friendships and relationships and a job, and love and loss, and all the things that we experience as human beings. So hopefully will be a little less scary for that 80%, and also a little bit more hopeful for those people who might be trans and out and feeling scared or isolated or underrepresented, or perhaps even don't yet quite know that they're trans, and maybe seeing a character like Julie will help them realize that their own truth.
No question about it. Well, thank you for putting yourself out there, and really excited to see your arc on the show. And we'll talk to you down the road. All right, Jen, thanks so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, DJ.